Hi, this is Kevin Trainer. Welcome to the tutorial for exercise 1 in the for the coding assignment for the Zelle 3rd edition, chapter 8. And we're going to do these maybe a little differently than we've done some of the previous chapters. In previous chapters, I've kind of built it to a tutorial program while you watch, right? And with the idea that you probably would type it in. And then when you went on to do your coding assignment exercise, you could either take that code and adapt it, or you could write it from scratch. And now we're getting to the point in the course where we have a lot of code that I would like to teach you, and maybe typing in every line of it's not the best use of time, although it's a great way to learn. So here's what I'm doing. For this week in the course, I have a link to this download demonstrations to supplement Zelle 3E chapter 8.zip. And when we expand this, we get a pie chart project as usual. And these are more demonstration programs that I'm going to review while I'm doing the tutorials. And I will talk about some of the other ones in class. But for the tutorials, I'm going to take from these. And the first one that I'm going to do is this flexible user interaction using while. And what I'm going to recommend is that you open it up with just a text editor. I'm here on the Mac and I use Sublime. Okay, and I have this. And rather than typing the code in, right? What I think would work well would be to open it up in another editor other than PyCharm like I have, and then bring over the lines of code. It's kind of like I bring over the lines of code as I do the tutorial. Okay, and that won't be quite so valuable as typing it in, but it'll be more feasible from a time point of view, and I think it's going to balance out our priorities. Okay, so this is a program. Let's take a look at this. So the name of this program, I'm going to create a new, I want to highlight the project. I was saying I want a new Python file. And this one's called what? _05. That keeps them in order. Flexible user interaction using while. And this is probably a little bit long for a program name, but the good thing here is that it's a good title for the example. Okay, and so let me just bring over the doc string. Okay, so we want to demonstrate flexible user interaction using while. The program uses a Sentinel Loop, which is one of the concepts that we cover in the chapter. The Sentinel Loop is kind of a classic design pattern. And what we're going to build is this thing that we call the flexible integer adding machine. And it's flexible in the following respect. The user doesn't have to tell us how many integers they're going to want to add before we start. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to keep prompting them until they simply press enter to say that they're done. Okay. And I'm going to want to define a main. So let me do that. Okay. And then down at the bottom, I'm going to have a call to main, right? You see that? Okay. And somehow that didn't get to where I wanted it. So there we go. So I've got too many blank lines there. And I think I've got 6, 7, and 8 are blank here. I think we only want 6 and 7 blank. Okay, that's good. So I'm not going to have to open up any files or those kinds of things because this is a program that interacts with the user at the console. So the first block of code I'm going to bring over is this. Okay, I'm going to print a message that says what we're doing. It's kind of a nice usability thing. Welcome to the flexible integer adding machine. And then I've got a count that I want to initialize a 0 entry count, and then I've got a sum of entries that looks like an accumulator. Okay, and I'm giving these integer zeros because this is an integer adding machine. Okay. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the while to control the loop. Okay, and here's the first thing. When we're using this pattern that I'm teaching you folks to do, the first thing that we want to do before we get into the while loop is we want to read the input once. And we call this a priming read. And we mean this in terms of priming the pump. So the while construct is only useful if there's already data available when you encounter while for the first time. In the same sense, a pump for water is only useful if it's been primed. And I'll explain that in class. That has to do with the way water pumps actually work. Okay, that's why we call this a priming reads. We're going to read it one time before we start the while. And now we're going to have a while block. Let me bring that over there. And let's talk our way through that. Okay. So, so the while we say is while entry as string, that's what we're calling the string input that we're going to get from the user, while it's not equal to the empty string. So if you look at how we're prompting, we're saying, please enter an integer value to be added, just plain enter to stop. Well, just plain enter is going to give us the empty string, and that's going to be the Sentinel value, okay? So while we haven't, while the user hasn't entered the empty string, which is to say, while they're not done, well, we have an entry already. Now, the entry that we got already may be just an empty string, and it may say that we're done, in which case we're just going to go right past the while loop. So one interesting thing about the while loop is you can execute the body 0 times. And that's very useful for this kind of application that we're putting it to right here. Okay, but if we have a real entry, okay, first we're going to convert it so that we have a proper int value, okay? We're going to add 1 to the entry count, okay? We're going to accumulate entry into sum of entries, Okay, and then at the bottom of the loop, when you use this kind of design, which is really the one that I recommend when we're using the while, okay, at the bottom of the loop, you prompt the user again. Okay, so the design and pattern that we're following is before you get to the while, you need to have a priming read, and then within the while, you do the work for the entry that you have in hand. If you don't have a proper entry in hand, you won't even get into the while. And then the last thing that you do at the bottom of the loop is you do a read, which is either going to get you the next real entry or it's going to get you the empty string, in which case you're done. So this is going to allow us to process all of the entries that we need. It's even going to behave okay when the user gives us the empty string on the first prompt. All right, and let's bring over a little more code, okay? So here's the reporting that goes on at the end. That'll finish off the program. Okay. So we're going to give different output on the console depending upon how many entries we received. So if we got no entries, then we're going to print no entries were provided. We're going to skip a line before we do that. Else, we're going to format a very pretty and user-friendly string using an F string. The sum of these, however many entries, is the sum of the entries. And we can put a period on the end of the sentence because it's an integer. It's not going to be confused with a decimal point because this is just an integer adder. Okay? And that's it. So we do some initialization, then we do our priming read, then we have our while loop, okay? And then when we're done with the while loop, we have processed all the input that we've been given. In terms of the output, we distinguish between the case in which we weren't given any input, in which case we have a message for that, and then the case where we had proper input, and we're going to report that. And the only other thing here is I have a squiggling line at the end of the call to main because I have to have an empty line after it, according to the PEP 8 style guide. Okay, so now I'm going to make sure this is all saved, which it is, and I'm going to run it. Okay. So the first case that I want to try is, what if the user says that they're done right away? They just press enter. No entries were provided. Well, that's good. Let's try it again. What if they give us one entry? They give us a 1, and then they say they're done. Well, the sum of these 1 entries is 1. Okay. And what if they give us several entries? They'll give us a 1, they'll give us a 2, they'll give us a 4, then they'll just press enter to say that they're done, and the sum of these 3 entries is 7. That's the right thing. Now, I just want to point out that while this is more flexible, and that's user-friendly in its own way, we still aren't capturing bad input from the user. So despite the fact that this is flexible, okay, if we give it bad input like hi mom, it's still going to blow up. Okay, and that's okay. We're not going to fix that till we get to the next exercise. So that's it for the tutorial. You're doing a similar program, and I'm going to say bye until next time. Bye-bye.